Here in this video, we try to learn the concept of eccentric loaded rivet joint. So here with the help of this figure, we try to understand this complete concept. So here there are two plates, one is the blue plate and other is the purple color plate. This purple color plate is mounted on this blue color plate with the help of these four rivets, or there is a permanent connection between these two plates with the help of these four rivets. So this is the rivet number 1, this is the rivet number 2, this is rivet number 3, and this is rivet number 4 basically. This G is called the centroid of the rivet system. Here we see that a load is acting at a distance of E from this centroid, and because this load line is not passing from the CG, there should be a distance E between load line F and the centroid. That's why this complete system we are calling as a eccentric loaded rivet system, and this E distance, the distance between the centroid and the force F, we are calling as a eccentricity. So it is defined here. Eccentric loaded rivet joint means as the load line does not pass from the centroid of the rivet system. So here this is the example of the eccentric loading connection, and the distance between these two we call an eccentricity. This is a four rivet system. The pattern, this pattern may be a square pattern, this may be a rectangle pattern, this may be a triangular pattern, this may be of any kind of pattern, this may be a row pattern also, and this may be a column pattern. Okay, and we assume that all the four rivets are identical in nature. First of all, we find the centroid of the rivet system. So there are two terms, one is called the centroid and another is called the center of gravity, CG. So CG is normally defined as where the whole mass is acting of the rivet system, and centroid is normally defined where the whole area of the rivet system is acting. So here, because we are dealing with the area of these rivets, that's why we call them as a centroid. So first of all, let us find how to find the centroid of the rivet system. The rivet system may be a square system as shown in the figure. It may be a rectangle system, it may be a row pattern, it may be a column pattern, it may be a triangle pattern, it may be of any fashion basically. So let us first of all understand how to find out. So to find out the centroid of the rivet system, first of all we have to locate the axis. We have to locate the x-axis and we have to locate the y-axis basically. So x-axis is normally chosen in such a way that it should pass from the center line of the lower extreme position of the rivet system. So here we see that 1 and 4 rivets are at the lower extreme position. So we pass a line between the center of these rivets 1 and 4, and to that we call as an x-axis. To locate the y-axis, normally we take the left extreme position of the rivet system. So here 1 and 2 are the extreme most rivet, and the line is passing from the center of these two rivets. We normally locate as them y-axis. So where these two axes cut each other, there we normally represent the origin, or we locate the origin at that point. So here these two axes cut the center line of the rivet number 1. So the rivet number, the location of the rivet number 1 is called the origin, and the coordinate of the system is 0, 0. So next thing is we have to make a table like this one, in which we represent the rivet number. So here rivet number 1, rivet number 2, rivet number 3, and rivet number 4. We have to, in the next column, we have to write down the area of the rivets. So rivet A1 is having A1 area, rivet 2 is having A2 area, rivet 3 is having A3 area, and rivet 4 is having A4 area. Now we have to locate the coordinate x and y coordinate of the rivet system here. So rivet 1 lie on the origin, that's why its coordinate is 0, 0. Here suppose this distance is A, the distance between the rivet number 1 and 4 is A, and the distance between rivet number 1 and 2 is B. So the coordinate of this 4 rivet is A, 0. If we come to the second one, the coordinate of the second rivet is 0 into B. So we write down 0 into B. The coordinate of the A3 is A and B. The coordinate of the rivet A3 is A and B here. So we find out the x coordinate of the centroid. So x bar should be equal to summation A x divided by summation A. Summation A is the summation of the product of area into its x coordinate. So first of all the area is 1, A1 area, and its x coordinate is 0. So A1 into 0. This is A2 into 0. Second, the area of the second rivet is A2, the A2 into 0. Then A3 into A, the third rivet, and similarly A4 into A. So we multiply the area with the x coordinate and do the summation of this thing and divide by the total area. Total area is A1 plus A2 plus A3 plus A4. So from here we can take A common. So this is A3 plus A4 divided by A1 plus A2 plus A3 plus A4. If you see that if all the areas are equal, if A1 should be equal to A2, if A1 should be equal to A2 should be equal to A3 should be equal to A4, then on the upper side we have the twice times of area, on each we have the 4 times of area. So normally this is coming out to be a by 2. So x bar coordinate is a by 2 if the all the limits are normally be of identical area. Similarly, we find out the value of y bar here, that is summation ay divided by summation a. Summation ay is the sum of the product of area into its y coordinate here. So we see that for the first root it is a1 into 0, this is a1 into 0. For second root it is a1 into b, a2 is the area and the y coordinate is b, so a2 into b. For third root is a3 into b, so this is a3 into b, we write down here. Then for the fourth root is a4 into 0, this is a4 into 0, we divide by the total area, that is a1 plus a2 plus a3 plus a4. When we solve this, so we got the value of y bar, it is a2 plus a3 into b divided by a1 plus a2 plus a3 plus a4. If all the rivets are of identical nature, which normally happen, then this y bar should be equal to b by 2. So here the coordinate of this centroid, that is x bar and y bar, for the identical rivets whose areas are equal, basically that should be a by 2 and normally b by 2 basically. So this way we see that, this way we find out the centroid of the any of the rivet system. It may be a road system, it may be a pattern system, it may be of any kind of system. After finding out the centroid of the rivet system, the next task is to find out the primary and secondary shear force because of the external applied force F on the rivet system. So here we see that if force S is applied here on the rivet system at a distance E from the centroid of the rivet system, which is G in this case. So we see the effect of this force at the centroid. So we introduce two forces F and F, which are equal and opposite in the magnitude at the centroid basically. So this is the first force acting in the downward direction, and this is the other force which are acting in the upward direction at the centroid. These two forces are equal and opposite, they will nullify the effect of each other. Then the whole system remains as it is as in the previous situation. This force F and this force F, this downward force F and this upward force F, they are equal and opposite, and they are at a distance of E. So they will form a couple. They will form a clockwise couple about the centroid, and there is only one remaining force F and the couple whose value should be equal to Fa. So here we see that there should be a force F here and there should be a couple whose value should be equal to F into E. So because of this force F, which is producing a direct shear stress inside each and every rivet, so it produces a primary shear stress, and because of this couple F into E, a secondary shear force is producing in each and every rivet. So the force which are representing by F1, this F symbol, F1, F2, F3 and F4, they are called the primary shear force, and the secondary shear force are representing by the symbol S1, S2, S3 and S4. So this S symbol normally represents the secondary shear force. We have to find out this value of the primary and secondary shear force in this situation here. Now because this F force is applied at the centroid, so we assume that this force F is equally divided in all the rivets. So the primary shear force F1 should be equal to F2, should be equal to F3 and should be equal to F4, and this should be F divided by the number of rivets. Number of rivets in this case is 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So the primary force are equal in each rivet, that is should be equal to F1 should be equal to F2 should be equal to F3 should be equal to F4 should be equal to F divided by 4, where F4 is the number of rivet. If the system having 6 rivets, 7 rivets, 8 rivets, then accordingly this number will be changed here. So we write a general formula, that is F divided by N, where N is the number of rivets. Here it is 4, that's why we put here force. Now this primary shear force is the resisting shear force which are producing in each and every rivet. Therefore their direction is in the upward basically. So here at rivet 1 the F1 is acting in the upward direction. Here at rivet 2 this is acting, F2 is acting in the upward direction. Here at the rivet 3 this primary shear force F3 is also acting in the upward direction, and here at this fourth rivet this primary shear force is F4 and this is also acting in the upward direction. So in this way we have to find out the primary shear force which are acting on all the rivets basically. Now we have to find out the secondary shear force basically. So we see that there is a couple whose value is F into E, and this couple is the clockwise couple. So because of this clockwise couple, there should be a resisting couple in the anti-clockwise direction which are producing in each and every rivet basically. So suppose this S1 is the secondary shear force in rivet number 1, this S2 is the secondary shear force in the rivet number 2, similarly S3 is the secondary shear force in rivet 3, and similarly the secondary shear force is F4 in rivet number 4. So first of all we assume that these secondary shear force S1 is proportional to the radius vector R1. So S1 is proportional to R1. This S2 is proportional to R2. Okay, this is the radius vector. Radius vector is the distance of the center of the rivet from the centroid basically. Is the radial distance here. So S2 is proportional to R2. Similarly, S3 distance is R3 from the centroid. This is S3 R3. So S3 is proportional to R3. Similarly, S4 is proportional to R4. So we remove the proportionality sign here and replace them by a constant here. So S1 should be equal to K times R1, S2 should be equal to K times R2, and S3 should be equal to K times R3, and S4 should be equal to K times R4. This is our equation number 3 basically. Now, what is happening? Now we have to balance the external couple with the help of the internal resisting moment or internal resisting moment because of this force S1, S2, S3 and S4. So the moment of this S1 force about the centroid is S1 R1 acting in the anti-clockwise direction. Similarly, of this force S2, the moment is S2 into R2. This is also acting in the anti-clockwise direction. So we write down here S1 into R1 because these are the resisting moment basically. So S1 R1 acting in the anti-clockwise direction. Similarly, S2 R2. Then for third force S3, this is S3 into R3 acting in the anti-clockwise direction. And similarly for the fourth force, okay, that is S4 into R4. Okay, that's why we add all these force, because these add all the force, all the couples or all the moments are acting in the anti-clockwise direction, and we balance with the clockwise couple because of the external force at the center, that is F into E basically. Now our next step is from the equation third, we put the value of S1, S2, S3 and S4 in this equation number 2. So we find out the value of the constant. Let us see how to find out the constant K. So here we put the value of S1, S2, S3 and S4 in equation number 2. So we have Fe on this left side. Here we have S1 value is K into R1 multiplied by R1. So this is KR1 square. The second term come out to be KR2 square. The third term is coming out to be KR3 square. And the fourth term is coming out to be KR4 square basically. Because we take K common on the right side. So K is the common here. R1 square plus R2 square plus R3 square plus R4 square. So the value of K should be equal to F into E divided by R1 square plus R2 square plus R3 square plus R4 square. So with the help of this formula, we find out the value of K. If there are 6 rivets, so again we increase the radius factor here, we increase the force because of these factors here, and we again multiply it by divide this Fe divided by the other term also, because there are 4 rivets. That's why we have taken R1 to R4 here. Now we put the value of K in this equation, because S1 we know is K into R1, so S1 should be equal to K. K is value this way into R1. So the value of force S1 should be equal to F into E into R1 divided by R1 square plus R2 square plus R3 square plus R4 square. The value of S2 is, because this force S2 is K into R2. So this is the value of K is this one. We multiply this K by R2. So this is Fe R2 divided by R1 square plus R2 square plus R3 square plus R4 square. Similarly, we got the value of S3, that is Fe R3 divided by R1 square plus R2 square plus R3 square plus R4 square. Similarly, we got the value of S4, that is F into E into R4 divided by R1 square plus R2 square plus R3 square plus R4 square. So we know the value of primary shear force in each and every rivet. We know the value of secondary shear force between each and every rivet. And these two forces, F1 forces and F2, because this force F is acting in the plane of the slide. Okay, in the plane of the rivet. That's why this force F1, F2, F3 and F4, they are also acting in the plane of the slides. This S1, S2, S3, S4 also, because they produce a secondary shear stress. Okay, these forces are also in the plane of the slide basically. So all the forces are in the plane of the slide or plane of the figure basically. So directly we can add them, because there are two forces F1 and S1 or F and S at an individual rivet, and the angle between them is theta1. So directly we can add them. So let us see how to find out the net resultant force on each and every rivet. Finding out the primary and secondary shear force, we have to find out the resultant shear force on each rivet. So there are 4 rivets. On the 4 rivet, we have to find out the resultant force. If we analyze any of the rivets, suppose we analyze the first rivet and we see that there are two forces, primary force representing by the symbol F and the secondary force representing by the symbol S. If we carefully see these two forces, so these forces are the coplanar and concurrent force system. So to find out the resultant force, we compute the law, we follow the law of parallelogram here, and we compute the parallelogram, and the diagonal of this parallelogram will represent the resultant force. So R1 is the resultant force of this force F1 S1. Similarly, R2 is the resultant force of the force F2 and S2. Similarly, R3 is the resultant force of the force F3 and S3. Similarly, the resultant force R4 is the resultant of the force F4 and S4. So here we write down the formula to find out the resultant force basically. So the resultant force is equal to Ri, that should be equal to under root Fi square plus Si square plus 2 Fi Si into cos theta I, where the I symbol represents the number of rivet. If we find out the resultant force at rivet number 1, so we put here I is equal to 1. If we want to find out the resultant force at rivet number 2, we put here I is equal to 2. Similarly, if we want to find out at rivet number 3, we put here I is equal to 3, and similarly at rivet number 4. Suppose if we want to find out the at rivet number 1, so we put here I is equal to 1, that is R1 should be equal to under root F1 square plus S1 square plus 2 F1 S1 into cos theta 1 basically. So this way we have find out 4 resultant force on the 4 rivets, that is R1, R2, R3 and R4, and then we have to see at which rivet the resultant force is maximum. So we pick that value, so we call that value as Ri maximum. Okay? So the maximum resultant force. And if we see the rivets, so normally here the rivet normally will fail in shear and crushing. So this figure represents the shearing failure of the rivets. So here if we take 4 rivet, if we take first rivet, if we take second rivet, if we take third rivet, there are 2 plates. One is the bottom one, other is the upper one. Okay, and on each individual rivet, there should be resultant force R which are applied on it. So because of this resultant force, what is happening? The rivet which is used there to join these 2 plates together, they will have shearing failure. So when the resultant force is applied on the upper and the lower rivet basically, so they will shear out from this plane, and it is a case of single shear. So this Ri maximum, which should be equal to pi by 4 into d square into tau, because pi by 4 d square is the shearing area and tau is the shearing stress. So from here the shearing stress of the material is known to us. This Ri maximum already we have find out from this equation. So we find out the diameter of the rivet from this equation. One important thing we want to explain here, if suppose this F and S are same for all the rivets, okay, maybe this is the cases when we solve the numerical problem. If F and S are same for all the rivets, then this cos theta I is the deciding factor on which rivet the resultant force is maximum, where theta I is minimum, okay, where the cos theta I is maximum 1, and where the cos theta I is maximum 1, so on that rivet the resultant force is maximum 1. This is the case when F and S are same on all the rivets. So we decide on the basis of theta, where theta is minimum, on that rivet the resultant force is maximum basically. Now we see the crushing failure of the rivet in the next slide. This is that the rivet can also fail in crushing failure mode. So here we see that individual rivet, this is first rivet, second rivet, third and fourth rivet. In the previous slide we see that how the rivets fail in shear. Now the rivet can also fail in crushing basically. What is happening? When we apply the force on the lower and the bottom and the top plate, the value of the force is the result is equal to the resultant force basically. So what is happening? This rivet normally will make the plate oval shape basically. Okay, so means this plate, this area is in contact with the plate here. So what is happening when again and again we apply the forces and release the forces, so this plate will become in the oval shape. Oval shape means this, there should be chances that this will be in crushing failure because the rivet is in contact with the plate here. So we take the projected area in this situation. So the checking the crushing stress here, the crushing stress would be equal to load divided by the crushing area. So load here again we take the Ri maximum. We have to identify the rivet where the resultant force is maximum 1. So we put this value here in the numerator and divide by the crushing area, which is the projected area basically. So if d is the diameter of the rivet and t is the thickness of the plate basically, so d into t is the projected area of the rivet basically. So from here we find out the value of the induced crushing stress and see that this induced crushing stress should be less than the allowable crushing stress. If this is the situation, then our design is safe, otherwise we have to redesign. So one way to redesign this is, here in the crushing stress we put the value of the allowable stress and find out the value of the thickness of the plate, because diameter already we have find out on the basis of shearing. Understand the whole concept with the help of an example. So here there are 2 plates, one is the lower plate and other is the upper plate, and with the help of the 3 rivet system, rivet number 1, rivet number 2, rivet number 3, these 2 lower and the upper plates are fixed with each other, and on this upper plate a load of 25 kilonewton is acting in the downward direction. So because of this 25 kilonewton load, we have to find out the what should be the safe diameter of the rivet, and the distance between the rivet number 1, rivet number 2, rivet number 3 are same. They are 100 newton. The distance between 1 and 2 is 100 mm. The distance between 2 and 3 is again 100 mm. So first of all we have to find out the center of the rivet system. So as we tell, this is the row arrangement basically. So we have to pass a line from the bottommost rivet system. So because all the rivets are at the same position, so all the rivets are at the bottommost position, so we pass a line from the center of each rivets, so that normally we represent an x-axis. We have to choose the left extreme rivet, so the first is the left extreme rivet here, so we pass the y-axis from here, so the intersection of these two rivets will be the origin. So one is the origin one here, this is the second rivet, and this is the third rivet basically. So next we have to make a table. Then rivet number 1, rivet number 2, rivet number 3, their areas, all rivets are identical in area, so we put their area be A and A because all having the same area. We write down the centroid coordinate system here, or centroid coordinate basically. So here this is first rivet is at the origin, so its coordinate is 0 0. Rivet number 2 is at the coordinate of this is 100 into 0, this is 100 into 0. Rivet number 3 is at a distance of 200 from from the origin, so this is 200 into 0. We find the value of x bar, that is a1 x1 plus a2 x2 plus a3 x3 upon a1 plus a2 plus a3. So here a1 into 0, this is the a1 into the x coordinate of this one, this is a1 into 100, the second one for second one, and for third it is a into 200 divided by a plus a, that is 3 basically here. So 300a upon 3 should be equal to 100 mm. So the x coordinate of this centroid is 100 basically. Now we have to find the y coordinate, because we see that there is no rivet in the vertical direction, only all the rivets are in a row, that's why the y coordinate of the rivet is 0 basically. And let us see how it is coming out to be 0. So for y coordinate, there is a1 y1 plus a2 y2 plus a3 y3 upon a1 plus a2 plus a3, and that should be equal to a1 into 0, y coordinate is 0. For first rivet, for second it is a into 0, this is again 0 here, and for third again this is a into 0, this is a into 0 here. So on the numerator side it is 0, and the denominator side it is 3, that's why this y bar should be equal to 0. So the centroid of this rivet system is at a distance of 100 into 0. First of all, we have to find out the coordinate of this centroid, and now in the next we have to analyze the primary and secondary shear force because of this 25 kN load. Find out the primary and the secondary shear force. So because of this 25 kN force which is acting in the downward direction, a primary shear force is acting in all the rivets in the upward direction. So, and because all the rivets are identical in nature, so this total force of 25 kN is divided into all the rivets equally. So here on the first rivet it is 25 by 3, on the second rivet also it is same 25 by 3, on the third rivet it is also 25 by 3, so it is coming out to be 8.3 kN. Now we have to find out the secondary shear force. So we have to identify the CG. CG is at the second rivet here, and that is distance of this 25 kN force from this CG is 100 mm basically. So this 25 kN force will form a anticlockwise couple about the center of gravity, whose value should be equal to 25 into 100 kN meter. Because of this couple, this is the couple because of the external force here, so there should be a resisting couple acting in the clockwise direction which try to balance this force here. So to make a clockwise couple, so the force in the rivet S1 should be in the upward direction, and the force in the rivet 3 should be in the downward direction basically. Even that, so the couple of the S1 about this CG is in the clockwise direction, that is S1 into 100. Similarly, the couple of this force or the moment of this S3 about this CG is in S3 into 100 into the clockwise direction basically. So this way they will balance the couple because of the 25 kN force about the center of gravity here. Now we see that there is no S2 force because the distance of this rivet from the CG is 0. When the distance is 0, then there is no secondary force, there is only primary force at the rivet number 2. So we know that S1 should be equal to proportional to the distance 100, so S1 should be equal to K into 100. S2 is 0 here because the distance of the rivet from the CG is 0, the force S3 should be equal to K into 100. So we balance the external moment with the resisting moment here. So F into E is the external moment, that is 25 into 100 into 1000 basically, that is in Newton mm. That should be equal to S1 into 100 plus S3 into 100. We put the value of S1 and S2 here, S3 here. So S1 will come out to be K into 100 square plus K into 100 square, that should be 2K 100 square. So 25 into 1000 into 100 basically. So when we solve this, it come out 250 should be equal to 2K. The K should be equal to 250 divided by 2 should be equal to 125 Newton per mm basically. We put the value of K in this equation and we find out the value of S1 and S3 because the value of S2 is 0. So S1 and S3 both are equal, that is coming out to be 25.50 kilonewton. Now when we find out the value of the primary shear force and the secondary shear force, now we have to find out on which rivet the force is maximum. So here we see that the S1 force is acting in the upward direction and the primary shear force is also acting in the upward direction. So net resultant force at the rivet number 1 is the summation of these two forces, F plus S1. At the rivet number 2, if we see, there is only the primary force, that is 25/3. And if we see the rivet number 3, there are two forces, S3 and 25/3. 25/3 force is acting in the upward direction and S3 force is acting in the downward direction. That's why the net resultant force here at the rivet 3 is the algebraic difference of these two forces. Now, after finding out the force on each and every rivet, we see that at the rivet number 1, the net force is maximum one because both the forces are acting in the upward direction. So the rivet number 1 is the heavily loaded rivet. So maximum force at the rivet number 1 is, we call it as a R1 maximum or R1, that should be equal to F plus S1 because F is acting in the upward direction and S1 is also acting in the upward direction. The value of F1 is 8.3, the value of F is 8.3 here. So it is 8.3 plus 12.5, this is coming out to be 20.8 kilonewton. Now we know that the shear stress would be equal to shear force divided by shear area. So shear stress for the rivet material is 60 megapascal here, so we put here 60. The shear force is 20.8 into 1000. This is in Newton and divided by pi by 4 d square because it is a case of single shear. Now from here we can find the value of the diameter. The diameter is coming out to be under root 441.61 and that approximately coming out to be 21.03 mm. Thanks for watching this video on analysis of eccentric loaded rivet joint. Here we see how to find out the standard of the rivet system. It may be any, they are forming any kind of pattern, maybe a square pattern, maybe a rectangle pattern, maybe a triangular pattern, maybe a row pattern, maybe a column pattern. So we see how to find out this standard of the rivet system and how to find out how to analyze the primary and secondary shear forces and how to find out the resultant force and how to identify which rivet is the heavily loaded rivet. And based on the heavily loaded rivet, we have to see that what kind of stresses are producing in the rivet, the shear stress and the crushing stress are producing inside the rivet. So based on the shear stress we find out the diameter and based on the crushing stress we have to check whether this design is safe or the diameter of the rivet is safe in the for crushing failure basically. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share and comment. Thank you very much.